You can't see it.
Good evening. Welcome to the Salem Area Mass Transit District meeting, October meeting. We are holding this partially virtual. Today is Thursday, October 28th, a little after 6:30 p.m. I'll call this meeting to order, and then we'll proceed to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'll ask General Manager Pollack to lead us in the safety moment.
Great, thank you. As we are just a few short days away from that great holiday of Halloween, I have a few safety tips, especially for those of you who have children who may or may not get ready to go trick-or-treating. So I have some safety tips and some things to be aware of. So please take these precautions and try to have fun. Incorporate a cloth or surgical mask into costumes. When trick-or-treating, do it in small groups outdoors or enjoy other outdoor activities. Wash hands before eating candy. Track the local virus transmission rates and take extra precaution where rates are high. And if you haven't already, consider getting the COVID-19 vaccine and the flu shot. Things to be aware of during the holiday season, not just for Halloween, but all holidays coming up. Be careful of indoor parties and gatherings. Inviting trick-or-treaters inside your home. Using a costume mask as a substitute for a cloth or surgical mask. Crowded doorsteps as kids approach, and trick-or-treating if you feel sick. Ultimately, follow community guidelines from your local health department and stay at home and away from others if you are sick or have been in contact with someone who is sick or has COVID-19 symptoms. And with that, enjoy the Halloween. That's my safety message.
Thank you, General Manager Pollack. Next, we'll proceed to announcements and changes to the agenda, and I'd like to take the opportunity here to ask General Manager Pollack to briefly update us on the federal vaccine mandate.
Thank you. So as you may be aware, it's been several weeks now since President Biden made an announcement that he has instructed federal OSHA to implement a vaccine mandate. Oregon is one of the states whose Oregon OSHA follows in line with federal OSHA. So we are waiting for the federal OSHA to issue their mandate guidelines to states. And then we do know that the Oregon OSHA has 30 days from that date to issue their guidance to impacted employers of 100 or more. And in Oregon, it also includes local governments. We anticipate that the Oregon OSHA guidelines will be equivalent to or more strict than the federal. So once the federal guidelines come out for the states, we'll start putting our plans in place. We have been kind of doing that now, but we can only get to a point because we don't have the guidelines. But we can anticipate what some of those will be. The piece that we're really be paying attention to is the guidance that is given for those who choose not to get vaccinated. And our courses of action will be surrounded on that. We have communicated to our employees since the beginning that we follow the guidance that's imposed upon us. And we've also informed the employees about the potential of this mandate coming down, and that we will issue our rules in compliance with the Oregon OSHA so that we as an organization are in full compliance with rules, so we are not impacted through penalties or fines.
Great. Thank you, General Manager Pollack. Thank you for the proactive approach that you're taking with that. In particular, I imagine you're already doing this, but would like to put it on the record around the securing of testing, because my read of the OSHA mandate is that it's a testing mandate with a vaccine opt-out. So the testing component seems tricky, especially in the United States of America presently.
Right, that is one way to say the testing mandate with the vaccine opt-out is, yeah, so, well, you know, we do expect that the burden of testing will be on the employer, but we're gonna need guidance on how the state is going to provide us with ample testing on a regular basis, testing equipment so we can perform the tests, and who is authorized to perform those tests.
Got it.
I can say I've also been coordinating with the city of Salem staff on making sure we're kind of all moving in the same direction. So.
Great, thank you. With that, we'll proceed to the public comment section, and I don't believe we have not received any digital public comment, and there's no members of the public present, either in person or virtually that I see. So just take a moment there. Yep. And so we'll go ahead and proceed to the consent calendar. So unless there's any issues, I would entertain a motion.
I move we adopt the consent calendar.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
We have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 And I'll note for the record that Director Novato is excused from tonight's meeting. And with that, the motion is passed unanimously. We'll go ahead and proceed to the action items portion of our agenda with the first one, purchase of 5 fixed route compressed natural gas vehicles.
Thank you. I'll ask, and there he is, Greg Thompson, who will actually be presenting the first 2 action items. So, Greg.
President Davison, members of the board, can everybody hear me okay?
Thank you.
All right, I think that's a go. So tonight I'm asking that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Gillig for the purchase of 5 fixed route compressed natural gas vehicles for the Cherriots fixed route service for a not to exceed amount of $2,895,685. The Cherriots fixed route fleet consists of 64 ADA lift equipped heavy duty buses. Of these 64 buses, 34 are powered by compressed natural gas engines. Because of the district's environmental initiatives, renewable natural gas is used as the fuel. The 5 vehicles scheduled to be replaced are approaching 18 years of age, which far exceeds the 12-year useful life benchmark set by the Federal Transit Administration. And additionally, these 5 buses to be replaced are the last of the Orion 7 models. The overall CNG bus fleet ratio will remain the same. Regular replacement of these vehicles is necessary to ensure a safe, efficient delivery of this service. As part of the district's overall capital planning efforts, SAMTD staff is committed to ensuring our vehicles are replaced at a schedule consistent with industry best practices. The contract price is based on a Washington State price agreement procured under procedures set forth by the Washington Department of Transportation's Public Transit Division. The order will be for 5 40-foot compressed or CNG vehicles, buses, and all vehicles will be for the regular fixed route service. The financial impact is the funding is proposed in this contract is included in the capital project budget of SAMTD's adopted fiscal year 21-22 budget. And the vehicle costs are listed in the table below. In table 1, the price per bus is $539,137, and a times 5 and a $200,000 contingency for a total of $2,895,685. The funding for these buses is covered through 2 different grants, the STBG Flex 5307 and ODOT 5339 funds with a general local match. The table 2 in your packet reflects the grant amounts with the match amounts. The STBG Flex is an 89.73 federal percentage with a 10.27% match. And the fiscal year 1953-39 funds are an 85-15 match. So the recommendation is the staff recommends that the board Authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Gillig for the purchase of 5 fixed route compressed natural gas transit vehicles for Cherriots fixed route service for a not to exceed amount of $2,895,685.
Are there any questions?
Good evening, Manager Thompson. Nice to see you. I have a couple of questions, and the first is probably a softball, and that is, why a Washington State price agreement? Do we not have one in Oregon?
We do. Oregon recently transferred over from it was called Orpin, and then they transferred it. It went through a complete redesign, went to Oregon buys. So we used the Washington State price agreement in the interim while that system was not working. But we oftentimes, since the bus prices are established through both contracts and there's reciprocative agreements, we'll oftentimes find the one that's the best value.
That's fascinating. And then more a question on the fleet itself. So 64 ADA lift equipped vehicles, are these lift equipped or low floor? And can you just quickly talk about what the difference is?
The ADA equipped is that they have wheelchair ramps. They do, but the fixed route fleet, they all kneel for if you're not deploying the lift for an easier entry for the first step.
Okay, I couldn't remember kind of what it was called, but thank you for the clarification. And that's all of them now? Because I remember some used to and some don't, but that's a big benefit for riders.
They are all low floor kneeling, and with this purchase, the entire all 64 buses will be Gillig buses, so it will be a Gillig fleet.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Director Duncan.
I know that we've made slight modifications to some of our buses throughout COVID-19. Is that any additional retrofitting for that going to be included in this price, or is that additional?
Some of the retrofitting that we've done, and there's like the operator barriers. So when we get a new bus and we remove one bus from service, that equipment comes over to the next bus.
We love reuse.
Yes.
Other questions for Manager Thompson? I think you mentioned this in your verbal comments. I think you said this will not change the composition of the fleet by fuel type. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Could you remind me what the present composition is?
Well, 64 total. 34 of those are compressed natural gas, and the remaining are diesel. We're currently using B5, and we're looking at other options.
Thank you for saying that, I think, for my own benefit. Great. Any other questions? Okay. So with that, would someone like to make a motion?
I move that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Gillig LLC for the purchase of 5 fixed route compressed natural gas transit vehicles for Cherriots fixed route service for a not to exceed amount of $2,895,685.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, and Ms. Galiazzi, would you mind doing a roll call for this vote?
Director Duncan,
Aye.
President Davidson,
Aye.
Director Nguyen,
Aye.
Director Carney,
Aye.
Director Richards. Okay.
Director Richards, you're muted. Okay.
I saw his mouth say yes. Director Inahos Pressey,
Aye.
thank you.
Great, motion passes unanimously. We'll proceed to the next action item, which Manager Thompson will lead us in.
All right, good evening again, everybody. Director Davison and members of the board. Tonight, I am asking that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Northwest Lift and Equipment for in-ground lift construction services for an amount not to exceed $229,118. At the September board meeting, the board approved the purchase of 2 in-ground heavy-duty vehicle lifts to replace lifts that are currently 32 years old. Purchasing is from the Washington State Price Agreement. Approval tonight will fund the removal, disposal, construction, and installation of the 2 new lifts. This project also covers associated electrical connections, testing, and staff training. Prevailing wage will be paid to all contractors and any subcontractors. This is a sole source procurement. The lift manufacturer, Sterling Coney, requires that the installation be conducted by a factory-trained and authorized installer in order for the manufacturer warranties to remain intact. Northwest Lift and Equipment is the exclusive authorized installer and service representative for Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, Western Montana, and Western Wyoming. So they've got quite a range. Northwest Lift and Equipment's pricing is in line with independent cost evaluations conducted prior to the solicitation. This included the review of several other similar projects. Funding of this proposed contract will be included in the capital project budget of SAMTD's adopted fiscal year 21-22 budget. The civil works are listed in the table below, which the civil work, which is the removal and the construction of the pit and the running of any electrical, is $103,059 per lift. And the installation of the new lifts and training of shop personnel is $11,500 per lift, for a total of $229,118. Funding for the proposed contract is covered through fiscal year 2019 5307 grant, using general funds as the local match. In table 2 lists the breakout of the percentage. It's an 80-20 match. The federal portion is $183,294, and the local match amount is $45,824, with a total of $229,118. Staff recommends that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Northwest Lift and Equipment for in-ground construction services for an amount not to exceed $229,118. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Manager Thompson? Director Duncan?
Yeah, just a quick point of clarification, just for curiosity's sake. It says that there's only the one factory-trained authorized installer, but then it goes on to say that installer and service representative. Just to be clear, we can still work on these ourselves after they're installed, correct? Or do we need to contract with Northwest Lift and Equipment each time we service them?
Well, there'll be a warranty period, and Northwest Lift and Equipment handles the warranties. We currently have a couple similar lifts in the shop, so depending on what's needing to be done, if it's really getting into the lifts, then we rely on that vendor to do that work. But the ongoing, the PM inspections and the cleaning and the servicing, we do that in-house on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll just note for the record that I'm disappointed Director Navarro is not here to discuss the intricacies of lifts with you again, like last month. With that, if there's no other questions, would someone like to make a motion?
I move the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Northwest Lift and Equipment for in-ground lift construction services for an amount not to exceed $229,118.
We have a motion?
I will second.
We have a second as well. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, Ms. Galeazzi, would you please call the roll?
Director Inahos Pressey.
Aye.
Director Richards. Okay. Director Carney.
Aye.
Director Wynn.
Aye.
President Davidson.
Aye.
Director Duncan.
Aye.
Great, thank you, Ms. Galeazzi. And thank you, Manager Thompson.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is for bus stop improvements.
Great, I'll ask Stephen Dickey to come online, our Director of Technology and Program Management, to present the report.
Good evening, President Davidson, members of the board. Tonight, I come to you with a proposal to have the board approve a project budget of $228,600, which includes a 20% contingency, and direct the general manager to enter into a contract with R&R Construction for the construction of bus stop improvement project group number 4. So a little background, and especially since we have some newer members of the board, this has been a multi-year and multi-phase project that's been underway. And it is to improve our bus stops to meet the Americans with Disabilities Act standards, and also to improve some of our customer experience amenities at our bus stops. The district currently has 697 bus stops with the local fixed route, within the local fixed route service, and 72 in the regional service area. Of these stops, 296, or 42.47% of the stops for local service, and 37, or 51.39% of the stops for regional service meet those standards. So what that leaves is 401 local and 35 regional stops that still need to be improved. The requirements for bus stop to meet ADA standards are somewhat complex, but basically it involves a minimum width and depth dimensions and limitations of the amount of slope allowed for paved access from to the bus from the sidewalk. Every stop location has a unique set of circumstances that must be addressed. Some of these include slope issues, lack of public right-of-way, sidewalks in poor condition, no sidewalks, on-street parking, visibility issues, lighting, irrigation systems, underground utilities, etc. And I want to bring up some photos here. So if Ross could share the screen and these photos, because as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And if you could put those into the show format. Okay, so these first few are, why don't you go back to that first one? These first few are the examples of why we need to do some improvements. So I went to our friend Google Earth Street View and took a look at some of our stops. And this is a prime example of multiple issues that we face. And this one just happened to have one of our buses in it too. So this is a stop where we have an issue with cars parked. As you can see, it keeps the bus from being able to pull up to the curb. We have trees, mature trees that we would have to work around. We also have a landscape planter strip that is between the curb and the sidewalk. And if we were to say, well, let's move the stop back a little bit, if you see that not that far behind the bus, there's a car and a driveway there. So we can't move it to block a driveway either. So these are the things that we run into where we're challenged. And these are all things that can be overcome, but they all need to be taken into consideration when we start talking about what it takes to make that work for us. So Ross, let's go to the next picture. In some cases, there are limitations that are beyond our control. So this is a stop at Center at 17th on the heading out from downtown. And the spacing of this stop, we really can't go either closer to town or further away from town just because of the access to businesses and also the spacing of the next stops available. So as you can see here, for us to be able to get the 8 feet of depth from the curb face, there's something called a building in the way. So this is one of those cases where we work with the situation the best that we can. And in some cases under ADA, it is that we are to address the things that are within our control. and at a reasonable expense. Now, ultimately, sure, we could buy this entire building, level it, and put in a pad, but that's not feasible nor cost-effective for this. The other thing that you can note here is that the condition of the sidewalk is not great. And I can guarantee that there are parts of the sidewalk that exceed that 2% slope. So this is something where we would do a section of sidewalk to give us an area that we would meet the ADA standards, but the city of Salem also has an inventory of sidewalks that they are working through the city to make improvements to as their budget allows. So let's go to the next picture. This picture also depicts the situation where we run into with a lot of cars parked in front of our bus stop. It also shows us something that we run into, which is where streets that have been overlaid multiple times, but they haven't built up the curb. And if you look at this, the curb height between those first two cars that are parked there, you can see it's not a very tall curb. And earlier we talked about buses that kneel, and then we have ramps that come out. Well, part of the design of those buses is to make that ramp angle as level as possible with a standard 6-inch high curb. If your curb is down at near street level or just a little bit above that, it still works, but it's not as easy. And especially if someone is in a manual mobility device and they have to empower themselves up that ramp, it becomes more difficult for them to get onto the bus. So let's go to the next picture. And in some cases, and a lot more than you would realize in our city, there are no sidewalks. And in some cases where there are no sidewalks, there's also not even storm drain systems in place. They just have open ditches. And those are situations where we still have high demands from the adjacent neighborhoods for people who want to use the service. But it does create additional challenges when we do come to these areas and make the improvements. So let's go to the next picture. Ah, yes, this is an after picture. So this is what it would look like with what we call a curb tight sidewalk, where the sidewalk is right up tight to the curb, but we still needed to extend off of the back of that. And this was an area, this is on Lancaster near the Fred Meyer, where we have a high enough amount of ridership that it really necessitates having a shelter there. So this pad was placed and the extension off the back. So you can see to the side of the shelter, that pad is wide enough to give us that 8 feet of depth. And it also includes enough space for the shelter to be installed. This particular installation would be more expensive because we do place a shelter and have a larger pad. And also we, a few years back, replaced all of our poles and signs, but I was talking to some of the other people in our office today, and that's been now almost 5 years ago that we did that project. It doesn't seem that long ago. So next picture, please. In some cases where we have a curb tight sidewalk, but the ridership doesn't necessitate putting in a shelter, we're able to just extend off the back of the sidewalk so that we get that 8 feet of depth. And this is a picture on Hawthorne over near Northgate Park. Next picture, please. And in some places, we need to bridge that landscape strip. This is on Broadway. And there's a prime example of where you have a curb that is much lower than it should be because of multiple resurfacings of the street. So in this case, when we put in our pad to connect over to the sidewalk, we also built the curb up so that when the operator lowers the ramp, we have a more convenient angle for the passenger to use boarding and alighting the bus. And I believe that's all of our pictures. Yes, all right. So,
Steve, there's 2 more pictures.
oh, there are 2 more pictures.
One at Chemeketa, I think. Oh, one more.
Oh, there we go. One more. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, President Davidson. Yes. And then in circumstances where there's higher ridership, but maybe not as many as would necessitate a shelter, or the existing conditions just don't accommodate a shelter easily, we also have an option called a semi-seat, which is the brand name of the bench that you see that actually mounts to the sign pole. This one has actually been in place for several years, but we have these placed in several locations throughout the city. It creates a convenient place for people to sit if they want to while they wait, or if they have bags, a place for them to sit set them down other than just setting them on the ground. So it's an addition that has a very small footprint, but also provides a little bit more customer comfort and convenience. So in addition to making improvements to meet ADA standards, we really are doing things too to try to improve the experience of riding the bus. And by doing so, encourage more transit use. Some of these include the additions of shelters, as we saw, using pole-mounted seats, lighting, trash cans, and in places where we actually have the space to do it, we include a walkway from the back door as well to make it more convenient. The project has been managed in groups of stops, and that's why we have group number 4. And part of that is we want to size the bid to be attractive to encourage contractors of all sizes to bid on the projects. If you make the group too large, the package too large, then only large contractors really have the capacity to bid and do the work. If you make the packages too small, the big contractors won't bid on it because it's not worth their time to do so. We typically make those bid packages somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 35 stops. This package includes 27 stops, and we included the list of the stop locations in your materials. I won't read all of those. Of these, and this is the other piece of information that sometimes adds a little bit more complexity, is we actually do these projects inside our urban growth boundary area within 3 jurisdictional areas of oversight. So 23 of these are in the city of Salem's area, 3 are in the city of Kaiser, and 1 is with Marion County. So one of the examples of the complexities there is we have to work with 3 different agencies for our permits and our plan reviews, rather than being able to go to just 1 location. And then when we do improvements outside in our rural services, we end up working with each of the local jurisdictions for those as well. When we posted this bid, it was posted on August 19th, and it was an invitation to bid, which means it was awarded to the lowest bid. The close date was September 20th. We received 2 bids, which seemed a little bit low. We've had more bids in the past. And the lowest bid, which was from R&R Construction, was in the amount of $190,500. We did have procurement staff follow up with some of the other contractors that have done business with us in the past and who appeared to be interested. The responses that we did get back were that they are very busy right now, and based on the project schedule for this particular group, they were not able to commit to getting the work started as soon as we would like, but we're certainly interested in our future groupings that we have planned for January and March. In addition, we have also included in the motion a 20% contingency. And while that may seem like a significant contingency amount, right now in our current economy, there's a significant amount of volatility in our commodity prices, materials, and also in labor prices. So this just gives us a little bit of authority should there be a change order that we would encounter that would need to be accommodated without having to come back to the board for a relatively small amount to make sure that this project moves forward and is completed on time. So with that, we are, and this project, in the financial impact, this project was addressed in the fiscal year 22 budget. You can find the line item for this on page 122, line 34. And the project is funded with federal grants with local match. And the activities that are associated with this would include construction, engineering, design, permitting, and project management. And those are covered in the grant agreement. So staff recommends that the board approve a project budget of $228,600, which includes a 20% contingency, and direct the general manager to enter into a contract with R&R Construction for the construction of bus stop improvement project number 4. and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Director Dickey? Director Duncan?
Thank you very much. I do have a couple of questions. So you mentioned first that the city, they have jurisdiction over some of these sidewalks. Is there a way that we can help maybe help the city prioritize some of the ones that are also on our list, since they're both things that we're looking at and they are as well?
Thank you for that question, Director Duncan. We actually do meet with the city monthly, and in those meetings, we do speak frequently about the need for sidewalks to be improved. They do focus on the areas where there's the highest need from a pedestrian standpoint, and they recognize public transit access as being one of those critical elements. Just as a side note, a couple of years back, I also sat on the advisory committee for the streetlight project that the city has, and you'd be happy to hear that one of their highest criteria for deciding where streetlights would go as they add streetlights and make improvements was taking into consideration access to our bus stops as well.
I am happy to hear that, and it was part of one of my follow-up questions, so thank you very much for anticipating that. Yeah, my next question, actually, I'll skip over to the one that included lighting, which is lighting required in ADA? And you also mentioned that seating was something you were looking at. Is it a succinct list of what is required? Could you provide that, or is it a longer answer, which you maybe send in an email?
So ADA is really focused on the ability for individuals with mobility impairment to be able to navigate to and from the bus with limited restriction. So really what that boils down to, a nice flat surface that's wide enough for someone in a mobility device to be able to get off of the bus, make a turn, and then continue down the sidewalk. Now, there have been times when we have replaced multiple sidewalk panels just to be able to maintain the angle that we have to maintain until we transition to the city's existing sidewalk. In some cases, it's amazing. You don't notice it when you're just traveling down the street, but the curb is either significantly higher or significantly lower than the sidewalk. And it's one of those challenges that when we send our design team out and they look at that and they go, okay, well, this is going to take some creative approaches here so that we don't exceed the 2% slope. And 2% is not much. That's, it's, you or I were just to walk along something that went from 0 to 2%, we probably wouldn't even notice it. But it is something that makes a big difference if you're trying to navigate that, especially in a manual wheelchair, trying to navigate that, or if you just have limited mobility issues. And you asked the question about, is lighting required? It is not, but it is highly recommended, both from not just a customer convenience standpoint, but also from a safety and security standpoint. Having adequate lighting, not just in the shelter, but in that area, and making sure that there's good, clear visibility is very, very important. As far as other requirements, the other things that we run into are things like we have to make sure that we don't obstruct what's called the sight triangle at intersections. So if we're putting up a shelter or we're putting up signage, there is a triangle in traffic engineering that when a vehicle pulls up to a corner, they need to be able to see clearly enough in both directions to know when it's safe to travel across the adjacent street. And so we work with the city to make sure that when we're placing our shelters, because even though they're with glass in the wintertime, they'll fog up. And so they can create a sight barrier that we don't want to be a part of a problem with.
Thank you. Just one last little follow-up about that piece, which was I don't know what the technical term is, but the bumps that are before crosswalks that are usually to indicate for people that have vision impairment. I've seen those included at bus stops before. That was not part of this project?
Tactile panels are actually only, and that's the technical term for them is tactile panels, because they're designed so that someone is using a cane as a guide will know where the entrance point is. And typically the place where they are required, they're required both to be a tactile surface, so usually the little domed surfaces, and they are also required to be a a contrasting color to the surrounding pavement. And there has to be a minimal level, and I don't remember what the minimum level is, but a gradation of contrast between the two. And that's why you'll see them as either red or yellow in color. So people who have low sight, low vision, but they can see that differential, they can see that edge. What that is to indicate is for a pedestrian walkway where you would be proceeding where that edge is before you proceed into a traffic area. So they are not used typically in this country for areas where you have transit platforms. Now, I have seen different types when I've traveled in Europe where it is a grooved panel, and it's designed so that the king can just follow the grooved panel, and it actually is the walkway as they navigate through the full facility. But our current requirements don't have that. And when you get into trying to introduce something like that, then you get into other code standards for standard design, and it gets challenging.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I have one final question, which is, I know that ODOT's, I think it's their advisory committee, they're conducting a bus stop study for ADA right now. I know that I saw it just this last week, and I shared it online. They put it out in their notice that they were going to meet and public comment and all of that. I just was wondering, is this related to that, or were we just ahead of the curve? So,
we started this actually several years back and have been working our way through, but it is, I know ODOT is in a project right now statewide where they're rebuilding a lot of the curb ramps, because some of them that were built by them in the past were not built to ADA specification. And my suspicion is this is following after that. And it's quite an extensive project. And it's quite an expensive project too.
well, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate you answering all my questions.
Absolutely.
Other questions? Oh, please.
Thank you. Hi, Director Dickey. Thank you for the report. What is the timeline for completion of the work on this group of stops?
Well, we will have our pre-construction meeting, I think it's next week, with the contractor, where we will set the timeline. We typically look to have this size of a project done within 3 to 4 months. Given that it is being done during winter months, we are typically a little more flexible with that timeline, because if you get a span of weather where it's extensive period of either freezing weather or extremely wet weather, then that will delay. The contract term is through March 31st of 2022, which gives us that 4-month period. If we run into that time, up against that time, and there is justification for an extension, then we would issue an amendment of time extension only for that purpose.
Thank you. And then kind of related, and you mentioned the contingency as being related to kind of, possible price increases that I assume are related to pandemic price increases. I'm only assuming that because we've had a lot of work done on our house, and the contracts all went okay, but we are gonna wait another 14 weeks at minimum for a window that has been missing from the house for 3 months. And so I'm just wondering, if we are met, is there any possibility of this project being met with that kind of what feels to me unreasonable delay?
The majority of the materials in this project is concrete. And so it is not likely that we would run into that. The only time we would run into that is we're up against the production capacity of the local facilities, because there's also a lot of building going on. And so that would be my only thought, but we would not be looking at the same kind of delays that you see with some of the things that are having to be manufactured and then shipped distances.
Yeah, and there's no chips, so we're safe there. And then can you talk about the notification process for businesses or neighbors who are adjacent or near to a stop?
Yes, so we have a contract with Mott McDonald, who is our project management firm. And they have a process that we have worked with them on doing that notification prior to the work actually starting. So that'll be part of our pre-construction meeting with the contractor. It's not just notifying the businesses, but it's also working in conjunction with our operations department to notify them, because when they're doing work on the stop, obviously the stop has to be taken out of service and a temporary stop has to be set up. And we need to post that ahead of time so regular passengers know where the temporary stop is going to be located. So that those details, the timing of actually when they're going to be at location A and do that work, they give us typically no less than 48 hours, but we typically need to have more like a week's notice ahead of time. This is our first time working with this particular contractor, but our contractors in the past have provided for us typically a 2-week out anticipated schedule of the actual day they would be doing the work. And then as we get closer, if there are other influencing things like weather, they are in regular communication with us if there's any adjustments that need to be made. And likewise, once the concrete has had its adequate time to cure, they need to notify us and let us know when it's ready to go back into service.
Great, thank you. I'm kind of jumping all over the place here. These are not in what anyone would call a logical order. So these next two questions, though, maybe they're a little bit related. And the first is, how is the district selecting and prioritizing stops for improvement? And is there a relationship to our cherry lift demand?
We primarily, and that's a good question. We have completed 3 groups so far of 62, plus there's about, I just was going through the list. When we started the project, we had our list of all the stops that needed improvements. And in the meantime, for instance, out on Portland Road, where the city of Salem did the full sidewalk project along there, in cooperation with us and at no additional cost to us, as they went through and did their sidewalk improvement, they also improved those bus stops as part of the project. So in some of those instances, we were very fortunate that the city's project, but likewise, we fixed parts of their sidewalk also at the same time. So we're working together on that. But we typically look at it from a standpoint of highest demand, and that can also be highest Cherriots lift demand. We also look at it from a standpoint of getting the first ones going are the ones where we don't need to get an easement from a private property. We don't have extensive other design work that has to go into that might need a higher level of environmental evaluation that we have to provide to the FTA. And so we also try to group them based on those things. And we also try to spread them out a little bit so we don't have an entire stretch on one corridor of all the stops being out of service and our passengers having to use temporary stops. So you'll see that there are some groupings here and there, but it is if you look at the address and locations, they are located all over the city. Now, this next batch that we plan to bring to you in January will have quite a few that are on Lancaster. And that just happened to be because the group that is going to be in group 6, the one we anticipate bringing in March, will have several that we need to do survey work to determine right-of-way need or not. And then if we need to do right-of-way, then we'll be working with property owners. Some of these in this group, we have already done that with as well. And we had identified the need and have already received the easements from those property owners.
And let's see, let me just read this list real quick. Somebody else can jump in with questions if there are any.
Sure, I've got one. So it sounds like our next batch will be up in January. I'm wondering, based on the current rate or the projected rate of completion, how long it will take us to make improvements to the 401 in the local system remaining and the 35 regional?
So right now, through group 6, that will get us to 143. And then if we count the 10 that the city has done, and then there was one that was also completed when a development went in and they just took care of it when they did all of their street improvements. So the 11, so that'd be 154. We will be looking at our budget at that point on the grant funds that we have available. And so that's why we've also looked at and prioritized. From that point, we will then be putting them into groups and working with our annual budgets to look at how many we can do each year to continue the process as we work through. One of the other notes is, while it is desirable to have every single one of our stops to fully ADA compliance, full ADA compliance, there are some locations like the one at 17th and 12th where we do everything that we can, but we may not be able to get it to 100%. And in that case, we just document that we've done everything that we can within our power, and then we are able to do that. But in that, we also have to demonstrate that within a reasonable distance, typically the next stop, one direction or the other, has to meet the ADA standards so that the distance traveled is still not excessive to reach an accessible stop. Our goal ultimately would be to get everything up to 100%, but we will be assessing our budget once we complete these 6 packages, and then lining up to finish out as much as this grant will have available, and then identifying the funding stream or funding sources to continue the work going forward. And likewise with our amenities as well, where we really do need to make those amenities available for people, because the more convenient and customer friendly it is at the bus stop, the more likely people are willing to use the bus.
Thank you, President Davidson. This has been a really great conversation, so thank you for all of this Q&A. And so this is kind of related to President Davidson's previous question. I just Googled it because I didn't have it at the top of my head, and it's probably the 3rd or 4th time that I have looked this up, and it's always shocking that the American with Disabilities Act didn't pass until 1990. What is the ratio of stops we have that are ADA compliant to those that are not, and how many are just so far out that they don't have sidewalk access at all?
So we are, let me pull that back up here. We are at the point where we are currently, get to my up here in the report. We are in our local service, 42.47%, and 51.39% of the regional service are meet the ADA standards. So that's 296 of the stops within the local service and 37 of the 72 in the regional service. And then as we continue moving forward, we will keep improving on that percentage.
Other questions?
I thought I did, but now I can't remember.
Okay. Director Wynn or Director Hinojosa Presi, any questions from you two? Or Director Richards?
None from me.
Okay, I've got a handful here, so I don't want to hog the time. If I'm remembering correctly, the city of Salem has a policy in place where we have to do one-offs of reserving the space around bus stops for just bus parking. Am I remembering that correctly? That it's not a uniform process?
That is correct. However, there are some changes in the code that are going through right now in the development code that would apply to new development, that would require that if there is a bus stop at that location, that they would be required then to not allow there to be parking in front of the bus stop, and that they would work with us on making sure that that bus stop was improved to our standards as part of the project. So that is something that is a big step forward. It is quite a process within the city of Salem to have parking removed from an existing stop. It is a process that literally can take months. It involves a maximum of 5 locations at a time, and then those are posted for a total of a month. It's 2 weeks of notification on our part, and then 2 weeks of notification from the city's part. And then if there is any concern raised, then it goes before the Citizens Advisory on Traffic Control, or Citizens Advisory on Traffic Control Commission. It's CATSI. And they will then weigh the concern against the need, and then they will make a decision. If they cannot come to a decision, then it goes before the city council, and then the city council makes the final decision. It can take quite some time, and it is not a guarantee that we will come out with a result to have the parking removed. It does create a challenge for us because we do try to be very conscientious about where we place the stops in regard to being sensitive to parking needs within neighborhoods especially, and recognize that in some places where parking is restricted on side streets, then the need is to be careful how we place those stops so that we can minimize the amount of parking that we need to take so that we can get the bus to the curb. But also realizing that the people who don't drive that are in those neighborhoods need to be able to safely and conveniently access the bus as well. So it is a challenge. The city of Kaiser, on the other hand, is we work directly with the public works director. He takes the issue himself to city council, and we have never had a situation where it has come back as not being approved. And then they take care of the signage and the notification and everything. And Marion County is kind of in between.
Thank you for that context. I'd like to just comment here that in light of the city of Salem's stated climate commitment goals, and one of the planks of their draft climate action plan is to see a quadrupling of public transit ridership, it might be nice for us to remind them of that commitment and indicate that having dedicated spots for our buses to stop would help them achieve that goal. And so I don't know if the Remix software or the FDOT, I'm forgetting the name of it, the Florida software, would be able to quantify that. But I think especially as we consider how to improve or increase ridership in the region, that is definitely a recommendation that I would want to see us bring to the city of Salem to help them achieve their stated climate goals.
We would certainly appreciate that.
Can I jump in just real quick? Am I correct in that the city council is going to vote on the new zoning changes on January 6th? I believe that's correct?
I don't believe this zoning. They have several things in the works right now. The zoning changes are, I don't believe that's the same piece as the piece that was in the development code. The development code, it went through the planning commission about a month ago, and I had not heard the recent status of where it was in the process. But there is also a zoning change piece that they're working on as well at the same time.
Yes, I remember that the zoning changes also affected similar, maybe not exactly, but similar requirements in relation to transit. And I was just wondering if that would affect our timeline if we were trying to aim to incorporate those. They look like they're going to reach negotiations, some of which would probably delay our timeline, some of the requirements for tree roots and respect to that. Other things would make it easier on us given some of the new allocations made for transit. So I just was wondering if that's part of this plan in follow-up to what President Davidson said.
It would, the zoning change was, yeah, we would have to go back in and get into the specifics of that, but it was specifically talking about the neighborhood centers and the allowable uses within the neighborhood centers and what would be considered allowable. And we did have conversations with city staff regarding that because we did have concerns about some of the language, and they they assured us that the interpretation of the language was not to preclude us from having bus stops or even enhanced bus stops. It would not allow us to build a full-on transit center in those locations. But those were fairly isolated. They were not as big as like an overlay zone for an urban renewal area. So they weren't as broad covering as that. So we felt comfortable that the changes that they were making would not be have a negative impact on our ability to deliver transit service. However, the parking removal process is something that does need serious attention.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes, and that is not a secret to them that we have expressed that. It is, and I have had good conversations with them, but it is a process that's pretty well ingrained, and it'll take some time for that to be changed.
Thank you for clarifying the difference between the two code changes. I will look into the development code now, not just the zoning changes, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Nguyen?
Thank you, President Davidson. My question is not as enthralling as the city code, but more of an observation. I do know that the motion before us have already selected the contractors we would like to proceed with. However, just would be remiss. I wouldn't be your chair of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Committee if I did not mention and just kind of push staff on the fact that the sentence that said, typically a bid package of over 40 stops becomes too large for smaller contractors to handle, and less than 15 stops will not attract larger contractors. A contractor is always going to be too small to handle it until the experience comes, right? It's chicken or the egg. And so I just know there's going to be a lot of entrepreneurism that's going to be fueled as a result of the social awakening that we're having right now. And I hope that we continue to challenge our assumptions that a smaller contractor may not be able to come to the table. So thank you.
Yes, and we work within one of the requirements under the Federal Transit Administration is the requirement to remove any perceived barriers and to ensure open and fair competition. And so that is why we look at that. We also look at it from a standpoint of project management, and having bid packages of this size are manageable for our team to stay on top of and to make sure that we get them done in a timely manner. And having another project come out in January and another one in March is not precluding those to be happening concurrently with this package. And in fact, those are of similar size. So project group 5 is 25 stops and group 6 is 29 stops. So between groups 4, 5, and 6, we'll have 81 stops underway.
Thank you, Mr. Dick.
Yes.
Please.
All right, this is my last question. And it's going back to the cherry lift impact. And this is very likely beyond the purview of a stop improvement project. So this question might need to have somebody else answer it. But in terms of these stop improvements, if I'm not mistaken, I think I forget the ADA accessibility guidelines for getting to a stop, but let's say we have an ADA accessible stop and suddenly someone with mobility challenges can use it because we've improved it to an appropriate standard. How are we notifying those folks that are making the cherry lift asks right now? And can we put our travel training and program in touch with them, or would that be something they would need to proactively do? I'm just curious about the process for riders that might be impacted in terms of mode, cherry lift or fixed route by stop improvements.
I see Deputy General Manager Trimble has joined us.
Yes, I'll defer to Deputy General Manager Trimble.
So thank you, Director Carney. So to put into context, a few years ago, we did look at what we call conditionally eligible individuals who use our paratransit service. And those individuals who had conditions that precluded them from accessing bus stops. We haven't looked at it in a couple of years as with everything sort of going on, but it is our desire to get back to look at those conditionally eligible individuals who have these sort of restrictions for non-access because of whether it's a sort of a parking lot that we can't get into because of too many cars, or whether it, as Director Dickey talked a little bit about, some of these access issues. So something we've looked at before. It is our plan when we look at our sort of complete ADA plan to look at those conditionally eligible issues. So it's something we've thought about. We're going to get back to it here at some point, but directly to your point, Director Carney, yeah, it is part of sort of the evaluation when we look at our Cherriots lift service in its entirety. I hope that answered your question a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I just want to make sure that we're connecting people with what I think are our outstanding travel training services, if there's an opportunity to help them make that adjustment.
I think what I hope is the final question. Director Dickey, I'm hoping you could maybe briefly describe the interplay between ongoing maintenance costs and how we select bus stops for improvements and the decision of what improvements we're making to it. Because to use an extreme example, we could put a bus shelter in every single stop. You've indicated that ridership at every stop doesn't necessarily meet the threshold that we have internally for necessitating a bus stop. But I'm also curious to hear what the interplay is for maintenance. I imagine a bus stop on every corner or a bus shelter on every corner would be prohibitively expensive from an ongoing maintenance perspective. But I'm hoping to hear a little more nuance than just the extremes in my imagination.
Yes, and that's a good question, President Davidson. I mean, it would be, on the extreme, it would be a shelter at every stop with full amenities, but there's also the need then to take care of that shelter and make sure it stays clean and presentable, and that takes staff. So that is one of the reasons why we look at that. The other piece of it is not every place is as welcoming to transit amenities being placed in front of their in front of their business or residence. As much as we try to place our bus stops in the least obtrusive locations, some of them are directly in front of people's homes. And if they live there and they have their window that looks out the window, sometimes they don't want to look at the back of a bus shelter, a transit shelter that's sitting out there. But the more important thing is the balance between staffing and having adequate staff to regularly service and take care of the stops. And the shelters, of course, are much more labor intensive because it's important to keep them clean, keep the trash emptied. And so we do have thresholds. Our basic threshold is 20 boardings per day. We do boardings, not alightings, because typically when people get off the bus, they don't then stay in the shelter. So it's 20 boardings per day or more is where we would target to place a shelter. The next piece of that is in some locations, we may not have quite that many, but it's a location that has a high need for people to be able to access a grocery store or a medical facility where it's important for people to have that access and have a sheltered place to wait. And in some places where it just simply doesn't work to place a shelter, we may still have the ridership that would necessitate that, but it just doesn't work. There's not a physical location to place it, or it is cost prohibitive to be able to get the easement, or if you were to say, well, we're going to go down the path of exercising eminent domain, that is extremely expensive, and to do so to make an improvement to a bus stop would not pass the test of the cost to the benefit. And from FTA's perspective, that would exceed that cost benefit analysis. So it is something that why we had thresholds for that. We also have the same type of data that we present to where we place trash receptacles. And again, some of that is also based on the type of location and the demand. The same for the semi-seats. If we have a higher demand where we would have more people that are likely to need to sit. So a lot of it is based on need and the locale and what we would look at. And also we do put out as many as we possibly can and yet provide the level of quality of keeping it clean and in order that we'd like to see. If we want to increase that level, then we also have to take a look at what that means to our facilities maintenance budget and the capacity that they have, and would need to look at how do we increase that in order to make sure that we're taking care of our amenities.
Thank you for that, Director Dickey. I probably would like to connect with you offline to better understand things in this vein, in particular the semi-seats. I'm intrigued by the idea, and anyways, I'll leave it at that. If there's no other questions, and I'm not seeing any, would someone like to make a motion?
I'm happy to. I move that the board approve a project budget of $228,600, which includes a 20% contingency, and direct the general manager to enter into a contract with R&R Construction for the construction of Bus Stop Improvement Project Group 4.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing no discussion, Ms. Galeazzi, please.
President Davidson,
Aye.
Director Nguyen,
Aye.
Director Carney,
Aye.
Director Richards, Director Hinojosa-Pressey,
Aye.
Director Duncan.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And Director Dickey, before you go, I just wanted to appreciate your long suffering with us with all of our questions. So,
It's my pleasure.
next on the agenda is General Manager's report.
Great, thank you. I just have a few items to report as a reminder to the board and also to the audience watching and or listening. November and December, we modify our board meeting schedule due to the holidays. So in November and December, our board meetings will be the third Thursday of the month, same time, because the fourth Thursdays are Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. So third Thursdays. And then also, in that vein, November 11th, Veterans Day. We will be providing holiday service on that day, which is a change for us, so that is exciting. However, Thanksgiving Day, which is one of our 3 designated non-service days, we will not be providing service. A week from tomorrow, I'll be leaving to attend the APTA Conference and Expo, along with President Davidson and a couple of staff members, and I'm sure he'll report a little bit about that. And I did report last week on my weekly report. I have completed my stint as a member of the Rules Advisory Committee for the consolidation of the STF and STIF funding, and we expect to have the results of that published soon and presented to the OTC for approval at their January meeting, which will then set in motion a bunch of activity to merge our advisory committees and prepare for the next biennium's application process. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, General Manager Pollack. With that, we'll proceed to the Board of Director reports, and I'll invite Director Nguyen to provide her report.
Thank you, President Davidson. From the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, since my last report, our consultant Keen Independent Research has continued data analysis and review of documents, submitted additional requests for data and information, and have received for review related workforce analysis, DEI training, and DEI communication strategies, submitted a draft report for staff to review on how public agencies and private corporations engage in DEI-related advocacy and legislation, held a virtual meeting with General Manager Pollock and Deputy Manager Trimble this morning to discuss process and next steps. The next DEI subcommittee meeting with the consultants will be the week of January 17th, and there will be a full board work session as part of the January 27th board meeting. The DEI committee will be meeting the next couple of weeks to review activities that are to be held in November and December. Employees, which includes employees, local leaders, community stakeholders, and writers. These are, of course, virtual meetings as well as workshops to gather information on perceptions from these very important stakeholder groups. On a personal front, I just cannot seem to catch a break. Last meeting, we had a COVID scare. Luckily, this go around is nothing more than a cold, but alas, kids back in school means many of these fun adventures. So erring on the side of caution, keeping the kiddos at home so as to not spread any sort of germs. So otherwise, nothing further to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Nguyen. Director Carney?
Oh, great. Well, all of my reporting is going to be on the SCATS Policy Committee. So since our last transit board meeting, due to the timing of the two meetings, we've had two SCATS meetings. So there's kind of a lot to report on. And just if other board members have questions about what I'm about to discuss, please let me know, because I actually have a meeting scheduled with Mike Jaffe, the Transportation Planning Director for the COG, next week to talk through some of these things. So in September, SCADS had a presentation from Amanda Peets, who works at ODOT, and she was there to discuss a request that was made by the director of DLCD, where I work, of ODOT, to make the pass-through federal funding that ODOT receives contingent upon a local government's meeting the requirements of the climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking. And I believe that ODOT kind of softened that a bit by saying, intent to, or something like that. But that presentation drew a lot of concern from other policy committee members. And then in October, there was a letter of response that was presented in the packet that was sent to ODOT and to the Department of Land Conservation and Development as public comment on the process. So I'll come back to that. Also in September, the policy committee had a presentation from our very own Ted Stonecliffe on the Cherriots long-range transit plan. We reviewed the public participation plan for SCATS, which there is a survey that is open until November 18th and available online if people want to weigh in on that. And we went through the Transportation Improvement Program call for projects for the SCATS 2024-2029 grouping, and we had an update on the coronavirus funding, which is Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. And we always go over tip modifications at the end, which are usually pretty small adjustments to our existing transportation improvement program. So then in October, we did talk, and this may have transit impacts, so I'm sure that we're coordinating with appropriate folks, but they'll be resurfacing the Marion Street Bridge for $8 million. And we got letters from everybody about what they were going to do with their coronavirus thing. We talked about the tip updates again. And then for me, I was very interested in a piece of the agenda that talked about TIP project prioritization. And I think I have a link somewhere in here, but I don't need to go into an incredible amount of detail. The Transportation Improvement Program has a series of goals and objectives that are assigned to it. And those coexist alongside some federal goals, all of which can apply to the evaluation of specific transportation projects as they are ranked and selected and prioritized by the policy committee on the TIP. And Sarah was in the meeting, so feel free to chime in on this if you like. There was very little appetite from the policy committee to discuss increasing prioritization of projects as they related to climate action or greenhouse gas reductions. And there was also very little appetite from the committee to prioritize equity or environmental justice in the goals, or to make any kind of adjustment to the way things have done in the past. And so one of the things I'm meeting to talk with Mike Jaffe about is to just really understand the process, because it goes, I think, to another committee next, and then, you know, so it kind of has to wend its way through a couple different places. But I'm looking for places that it touches so that I can better understand the process and maybe understand how we might advance some of the things that are priorities for this board through that process. Please.
Thank you for inviting me to chime in. I think that there seemed to be a large emphasis put on safety and a disassociation between the effects of climate change on the safety of the projects going forward. And I think that part of this will be messaging for us going forward and emphasizing the safety risks that climate change prevents or that causes in our system, and the implications that has on transportation. As the mass transit board, we see that sometimes more than other people do because we have the feet on the ground that are physically experiencing, you know, the difficulties of the ice on the road and the smoke in the air, and, you know, the various implications that if you're in a car, you sometimes may not realize, you see less of. So I think that making that connection between safety and climate might be crucial to have our argument heard, since that seemed to be what everyone wanted to focus on. That's my 2 cents.
Well, I really appreciate the comment, Director Duncan. Thank you for chiming in. And I would say, you know, it's very difficult to argue with a place that has a high incident rate of, you know, car and pedestrian collisions that results in a death or multiple injuries. And so I certainly sympathize with that, but there is a weighting to the evaluation process, and, you know, safety has a weight of 4. Transit also has a very high weight. It's either 3 or 4.
3.
And, you know, environmental justice or equity is 1. And so it's really, it's down, it's last on the list. And the argument is that there is a lot of sort of crossover between public safety and environmental justice. But if that's the case, I can't see why we wouldn't either split the weight or somehow call out the importance of both in our decision-making process there. So I'll learn more about the process, and I'm happy to take questions or have conversations with people after that. And so the last thing I wanted to talk about was the response letter from SCATS to ODOT about ODOT's response to DLCD with the pass-through funding. So the climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking, I think it is slated for completion in May. I may have that date wrong. But this letter will have an impact on ODOT's decision about how to have a relationship to the process and whether or not they will consider that kind of a funding relationship to the outcomes of these rules. So I think there may be value as a board in considering submitting comment that projects our interests and priorities, both for ODOT's decision-making process with the Oregon Transportation Commission and also on the DLCD rulemaking process. It would probably be best if I recused myself. But I'm happy to put folks in touch with appropriate people that can explain the benefits to transit. But in the transportation planning rule updates, really it's all a focus on transit and active transportation, the rule proposal that or the rule changes that they are proposing. So I will end my board report there. I'm sure staff was like, oh my God, this is gonna be a 25-minute meeting tonight. We're gonna set a new record, and we have totally tanked that. But I just want to encourage the board to get involved in these efforts and to pay attention to what is happening. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Carney. Director Hinojos-Pressey?
Well, mine's going to be kind of short, since, I don't really frequently get the Citizens Advisory Committee meetings, which there are great, and hopefully we will get more of those in the future, as opposed to quarterly, we'll see. But I did get to go to the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce luncheon, and that was actually really fun. I got to go with Director Duncan as well, and it was a great lunch. It was very awesome to see all of our locally grown produce, and it was all about celebrating the agriculture here in Oregon. And I just really appreciated, especially being someone that's not originally from Oregon, getting a little bit of that history. I was definitely really surprised about the labor shortage back around World War II, and how the entire town of Salem would just close down to go help pick produce in the fields. And I think it just really speaks to our own community's willingness to come together. And I just thought that was really interesting. And that's it.
Thank you, Director. It's my turn next, so wanted to report on, so the first part of the month was the Mid-Willamette Valley Area Commission on Transportation. So it's an advisory body to the Oregon Transportation Commission. We've had multiple conversations about what our role is in relation to the Oregon Transportation Commission, and it appears as of today, ODOT staff and the OTC are making recommendations on changing that relationship. And so hopefully at a future board meeting, I will have better clarity on what our role is. And historically, the ACTs, the advisory commissions on transportations, have had direct influence on how money was allocated in regions. That is no longer the case. And so sometimes they just appear to be information sharing bodies. And one of the things we did learn about was the interchange of Highway 22 and Highway 18 near the casino out there. And to the point about safety being a top concern, that was one of the reasons articulated for that significant investment there. Though I'll note that there's often and this was something that was touched on, there's a balancing act between safety and speed. Or throughput of vehicular traffic. And so I think it is perhaps wise of us to question where that balance is as we serve on these different committees. Earlier this week and actually before I move for MWAC, so MWAC's December meeting will touch on how speed limits are set on state highways and how we could increase safety through more cost-effective means by perhaps either reducing the posted speed or by changing the road layout to ultimately get lower speeds. As I've talked about in the past, Highway 99E is a highway where you see frequent speeds above the posted limits. and there's been devastating results both to the community at large and also the Cherriots family in particular on that particular corridor. So I would like to, hopefully that presentation will help inform safety improvements that could be placed on 99E. Earlier this week on Wednesday, we held our final Climate Action Plan Task Force meeting. And so we've been meeting for more than a year now at this point, and there's a draft Climate Action Plan available for public comment. You have until November 6th to provide that comment. It's a large yet somehow paradoxically approachable document, so you can take them chapter by chapter, jump around, but I would encourage all those that are interested to take a look at those and then provide comment. In particular, among the transportation and land use items, one item that I think is needs to be prioritized higher is a building out of the bike network. It was something that we talked about on Wednesday. It just barely missed the cut of the top tier. It was literally the runner-up. And so I think it's absolutely achievable that we can get that into the top tier for a prioritization of city staff on a five-year timetable. I think that would provide all sorts of secondary transit effects as well, because bike riders and pedestrians utilize public transit. Today, the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments Legislative Committee hosted their second convening on housing. I had the opportunity of emceeing and moderating that convening. We had panelists from, in fact, we had a panelist from DLCD, but panelists that kind of touched different aspects of affordable housing and housing within the region. At a very high level, the Mid-Willamette Valley region currently has a 100,000 home deficit for the region. And an additional 50,000 home affordable housing deficit. So we are in a rather steep hole that we need to, as a region, work to get out of. And I think these conversations are particularly productive because we can think as a region as opposed to individual local governments who have historically not worked regionally. So with that, that concludes my report, and I'll invite Director Duncan to provide hers.
Thank you, Director. I'm just going to start off with just a couple of pieces that relate to some of the things that you guys had talked about. You mentioned the need for more bike lanes in part of the conversations you had. I just want to draw to everyone's attention that ODOT is conducting a survey. The survey I talked about earlier, but they are also looking into the bike pedestrian and bicycle strategic project. They are taking public comments on that through the 29th. In that advisory committee, I'm happy to provide any links that you would like to provide to your districts, sub-districts, there we go. And you also spoke to the home deficit, which ties directly into, I attended the Morningside Neighborhood Association this month, and there are two different land use changes, one of which, though, is a proposed land use change that would change, I believe it's Kitty Corner to the new Costco location that they're also proposing would turn into a commercial redistricting, or rezoning, thank you. They want to put in, I believe it was like what do you call, they're like mini malls?
Strip mall.
There you go, something like that.
Kitty corner across Kubler.
I'm going to let you look at the map on that. I can provide you with the map, but I
Sure.
am really very bad at directions. I ride the bus. I look at everything by view, right? That is one of my major concerns is that we are in need of, especially on main arterial routes, which that would be very, very near, housing far more than we need more of those strip malls, which at least in that South St. Louis area, we have multiple locations that are already up for sale, that are zoned for commercial, that within half a mile of that proposed location. So especially off of Fairview Industrial. So anyway, just piggybacking off of that. All right. So I attended the SEDCOR, it's really just a webinar right now during COVID, and interestingly enough, it was about the contracts for service to the Salem Airport, which is still moving forward. They're still doing what they can to get the match necessary. For those of you that are not familiar with the airport project, basically, there needs to be a certain pool of money available so that if we were to attract a major airline and they were not to get the ridership, the usage that they thought that they were, it's very expensive for them to be here. We, as a community, provide like a pool of money saying, well, if you don't get them, you can draw from this pool of money so you as a business don't lose money by being here. And they are continuing to raise money for that pot. I had a lot of questions. This body talks a lot about the climate action. And we are putting a significant amount of effort to reduce the amount of carbon emissions that the transportation sector puts into our community. And so it can feel frustrating to go to a meeting like this where it would kind of undo everything that we've been working very hard to do to bring a major airline into the area, which I did ask about, and he assured me that there should be electric airplanes in the next 50 years that will take care of that project. Additionally, he said that they had done a model where there's a carbon reduction for a person that drives, I think they took the average car as being a Camry, from Salem to Portland, and then if that person flew from Portland to one of the same proposed locations that they're proposing, that there would actually be a net, that would be more. So if they were to fly up from Salem, basically they would be a carbon savings. So I brought up the shuttle that we have from Salem to Portland and asked about electrifying that system instead, and they brought up the fact that that system is seldom used, which I thought was an interesting point. Anyway, so those were those two pieces and their answers to my questions about them. I do want to note it's very important that business and hospitality are strongly in favor of the airport, and for reasons I do think that we should take into consideration. In particular, there are people that travel to Salem, consultants, clients, etc. They don't stay here, and these industries believe that they would if there was air service here. And I think that as this project continues, this is something we should keep in mind as we look into the long-range transit plan and the South Salem Mobility Center, considering that the airport is in South Salem. That is all on that. So going back to the Morningside Neighborhood Association, we talked a bit about the proposed land use changes and echoing the safety moment from the beginning of the meeting, Salem Police Department reminding us there are traffic deaths every year due to Halloween. So please be careful, drive the speed limit, all of that. Reed Road is going to be updating in 2 sections. It's the most exciting thing to happen all year. So beginning actually next month through the month of August, we're going to see the first section developed. And the second half is going to be incorporated in a housing development project that has already been approved by the city. That being said, there is currently no crosswalk to Cambridge that has been approved. So if you would like to see that, you are invited to participate in public comment. These next, I'll cover all of the things that I did that were in direct relation first. I attended the Monmouth Independence Chamber, which was lovely. I would like to go back if you'll have me. Cherriots staff presented there, and I got to sit in and learn about it and visit with the business community there, who I've previously not had a relationship with, and everyone was absolutely lovely. So I'm really excited to provide additional service down there and get input about the potential, the talks about a trolley program. It was lovely, so thank you. I also attended some Salem Chamber, which is also lovely, but I've done it before, so. I met with Stephen about media, which was very exciting. As I indicated earlier, that is something that I personally enjoy. I do both professionally and just, it's something I kind of get a kick out of, is communication. So we talked about ways that the board can be helpful in the communication process that the media team deals with, and some of the things that they struggle with that we really can help bridge. And we've looked into some resources that maybe we can bring forward to the board in the future to make that less intimidating to everybody. So that was fantastic. So thank you for meeting with me, Stephen. There are 2 kind of public comment that I want to call to everyone's attention. So the ODOT survey that's available, if you look up Oregon Transit Rider Bus Stop Survey, that's the Oregon Transit Rider Bus Stop Survey. If you Google that, it should come right up. It is particularly in focus to ADA comment and other accommodations for bus stops. There is currently no end date to that survey that I could find, so please look into it and share it with your constituents. Additionally, the city of Salem is doing a survey for businesses by urban development, which I also think would be really great to have our constituents participate in, especially because I have contacts in employment that have said over and over again that one of the barriers to people getting employment can sometimes be transportation. And as businesses are struggling to find employment, if they can help tell the urban development department that having that transportation is important to them and will help them to be able to secure great workers, then that then helps us get the message out there in a different way than we normally do. So if you could share those with your constituents, that'd be great. And if anybody sees this and would like to do it as well, you specifically look up Salem business owners and managers. Tell us how business is going. That is, we'll take you directly to the survey. In reference to SCATs and then the chamber luncheon with farmers, I just want to bring up this little tidbit. I'm not going to speak about the project exactly, but there was talks about the bricks interchange and looking into adjusting that. And without talking about that project, it made me think about how we do not have any service actually that goes out to that entire area. And kind of echoing the city of, or what I just talked about with, businesses asking for the things that they need. I actually work out on that road, and every single business has a sign up saying that it's hiring. And I don't know what we would even do, and I'm not trying to be critical or anything, but I think that it's worth a conversation that is a very dangerous intersection. I literally watched an accident happen there on Monday right in front of me. And we have a lot of farm workers out there. We have a lot of industry workers out there. And I think that it's just something to keep in mind, especially as we're going forward into this long-range this transit plan. A lot of these workers are monolingual speakers that we may not have any data on because they may not have ever participated in our system. So keeping that in mind. I'll try to keep this last little piece very short. I'm sorry, I'm rivaling Director Carney here. So I was able to, my Rotary group this month had Dr. Alan Mix, who is from the IPCC, Intergovernmental Accord on Climate Change. You don't know what that is. It's the consortium of scientists from all over the world that get together and analyze all of the different climate studies and then basically present it in one large report to the world saying, this is what's happening, and this is what we suggest you do in a series of reports. And the most recent one came out this fall with 3 more to be coming up within the next year. And the piece that I just wanted to highlight as we keep talking about climate change and why it's important is this. So what the Climate Accord has found is that 2% is capping our change in temperature to 2% is possible. And it would need a 0 carbon emissions by 2050, which
2
is
degrees.
Yes, 2 degrees. And it would need a 0% or 0 carbon emissions by 2050. He specifically went to go study the glacier in Greenland because we do not previously have no understanding of how glaciers will operate. And this is what keeps me up at night now, so I'm going to invite you to join me in that. Their findings were the glacier melted slowly until it reached a tipping point. So they were looking to see what has happened in the past before we have any written record. And that tipping point, his quote was, "It disappeared like a shot." And they're talking about specifically like Greenland, the entire glacier continent, Greenland. And he said that tipping point is found to be at 2 to 3 degrees. So I invite everyone to keep that in mind. And there is, I believe, a presentation of the report happening next week. I'll see if I can find the information on that for anyone that's interested. And that's my last piece to leave everyone with.
Thanks, Director Duncan. Very uplifting. Director Richards. Oh, you muted yourself again.
Try it now.
You're unmuted now.
Yes, I just called. I just want to let everybody know that I had spent 11 days in the hospital in Salem.
Oh my gosh.
And so we have a very good hospital here, but it's not a place I'd recommend for vacation.
Oh.
Well, I'm glad you're back home.
Me too.
Great. Well, thank you, Director Richards. With that, we'll go ahead and conclude our meeting. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.